You're listening to the Flow Theory Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Wade Peary, and boy, do we have a fantastic guest for today's interview. Virginia Cavalier football legend, running back Mikell Juice Simpson. The man gashed the Maryland Terrapins in 2007 for 271 all-purpose yards and 2 touchdowns. His 271 all-purpose yards were good enough for 6th most all-time in UVA football history, ladies and gents. And his 152 receiving yards in that game were the 2nd most receiving yards by a running back in ACC history. Not to mention, he averaged over 10 yards a touch. Every time he touched the ball in that game, he averaged over 10 yards a touch. Absolutely disgusting, ladies and gents. But without further ado, please welcome Mikell Juice Simpson. How's it going, Juice? Thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm doing good, man. Appreciate you inviting me to this show. I'm seeing a lot of good things with your podcast, and I'm excited to get this conversation underway.
Awesome, Juice. Well, the first things first, this podcast is all about talking about games in the Flow State. Your biggest one in your Virginia football career was at Maryland, like I was talking about, 271 all-purpose yards, 2 TDs, the 6th most all-purpose yardage in Virginia football history. Tell me what was going through your mind before that game, Juice. Was there anything in particular where you felt good? Because I know that you said you liked night games in the Wahoo Watch Party last week.
Yeah, so night games have always been my favorite ever since, I was able to play in the lights in high school. But this is a funny story. So to be honest with you, that was the week before the Maryland game that they had moved me back to running back because I was playing like a flex kind of wide receiver here and there, running back, whatnot. And then Cedric Pierman got hurt. And then we played Connecticut that week. I think I played 1 or 2 plays, and then they moved me back to running back. So to be honest with you, I didn't even think I was going to play in the Maryland game. And during the week, Coach Dex, he kept saying, hey, you're going to get your shot. You're going to get your shot. But I just didn't believe it, to be honest. And I remember sitting outside of the hotel because it was a night game, so we had a lot of time to sit around. It was probably about 4 or 5 hours before kickoff. And I remember sitting outside on the phone talking to my friend from back home. And, we're joking and laughing. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to play today, et cetera, et cetera. And then I don't remember exactly who it was, but one of the players came out and they were like, yeah, I think you're going to have a role tonight, man. So that's when I went back into the hotel and I went and had a little brief conversation with Coach Dex, and he pretty much reiterated, yeah, you're going to be used often tonight. So I remember going right into the film room, and I was by myself, and I started to catch up on film because, like I said, I didn't take it serious, to be honest with you, because I didn't expect to play much. Maybe, a couple plays here and there, kind of how the season was going. And I remember just going in there and trying to lock in as much as I can right before that game and get as much film as I can and studying, the Maryland defense and, the pressures that they bring and, the personnel that they had. And that's how it kind of led up to the game. So it wasn't, something that I planned for or, really got excited. It was kind of in the moment where, it came to realization that I'd be playing a couple hours before the game.
Yeah, I mean, you had such an incredible performance that game, Juice. I mean, was there a point in that game where you just had tunnel vision to where you couldn't see the sidelines? I mean, explain what was going through your mind on that final drive when you touched the ball 14 of 15 times.
Because you said that just a locked in focus, as a player, honestly, I never heard the announcers, I never heard the band, I never heard the crowd while, I was in between lines. So I was just locked into the game and, trying to stay, in tune on what situations were popping up throughout the game. talking to players, my teammates on the sideline, the tendencies that they were seeing. And to be honest, I didn't even realize I touched the ball the final 15 out of 16 plays, or that I had, 150 yards receiving, 119 rushing, because I was just so caught up in the game. When we were leaving to head back to Charlottesville after the game, that was the first time I got kind of to my phone. And my phone was blowing up from social networks and, different friend requests and messages, and then I remember ESPN, they gave me the Player of the Week game sticker. And that's when it came in and it set in what I really, accomplished that night. But just playing in the game, to be honest, I was just taking one play at a time. That's what our coach preached to us, the next play, kind of forget about what you did the last play, whether it was good or bad. So that was my mindset for the game. So honestly, I wasn't even aware, that I touched the ball that many times, or that I had that many yards, or, I had more yards than the whole Maryland offense combined. So I was just so focused in the moment, that I didn't really care for, my individual stats. The biggest thing, to me was getting the win, and the way we won, the last for the 15, 20 seconds, flipping over the end zone, and it being controversial because the guy knocked the ball out of my hand. But when I looked down, I knew that I had scored, so I wasn't worried about the fumble. But, it took some time, for the rest to sort things out. And then right before that, we had a crucial 4th down and 4.
Yeah, talk about that pylon dive, the first down dive.
Yeah, so actually, I screwed that play up. If I would have followed Brandon Albert, around to the outside, it would have been a clean walk-in. But my mindset was, I need to get straight downhill and do whatever I have to do to get this ball over the end zone. It created a pile, so it left me, my only option was to jump over. Like I said, I was looking down at the goal line the whole time as I was stretching the ball out. And once I seen the white line behind me, I really didn't care if they knocked the ball out, if I got tired. I didn't care at that point because I know we were winning.
Talk about the dive that you made for the first down on 4th and 4, the way you were getting knocked out of bounds, like midair, to be able to extend the ball right at the first down marker. Like, to this day, one of the more impressive UVA football first downs I've ever seen.
Yeah, so actually during that play, like at that point I had 13 or 14 catches at that point. So Maryland kind of got, used to me coming out the backfield catching. And I remember when I was going out for a swing route, the first 2 or 3 steps I took to open up, I seen the linebacker kind of following me. So in my mind, I'm like, Jamil, don't throw me the ball. But Jamil gave it to me, and it was just a rest to that pylon, which was, to me, the first down. And once I got close, I knew my body was a little short. So the only thing I could do, was 4th down. I had nothing to lose. If I fumbled, who cares? I was just going to stretch the ball, as far as I can. We got the first down literally by 1 or 2 inches, and that kept the drive alive. And we sealed it off and got the win.
Yeah, I tell you what, that game to me symbolized something about you and Jamil Sewell that I always knew, but I didn't really think about it until I heard Coach Groh talk about it in the Wahoo watch party for the Miami game. I rewatched that before we talked today, and I tell you what, you and Jamil Sewell had some of the best chemistry I've ever seen as far as a quarterback, running back, handoffs and play fakes. And I thought it was beautiful how you guys talked about Jamil Sewell's body control. And not only that, he had some of the most beautiful ball fakes I've ever seen out of any Virginia quarterback. Talk about that a little bit in Jamil Sewell.
Yeah, Jamil was great with the ball fakes. He was a magician back there with that. What helped that a lot, too, the defense has to respect the fact that you can pull it down and run, or you can run it off of a bootleg, you're a threat on a rollout pass to tuck it and run, and pick up some yardage. And Jamil was a big guy. Jamil was 230, 240 area. So he could take those hits, and Jamil was aggressive. He had like that linebacker mentality playing quarterback. And like I mentioned in there, Jamil Sewell was the only quarterback that I know in the history that would talk so much trash to the defense. And I'm like, that's kind of the opposite playing quarterback. You don't want to tick that defense off, give them more reason to want to, inflict pain on you, when they do get a chance to hit you. So Jamil just was a competitor. He was a monster. He was fierce. But the chemistry that me and Jamil had, got us in trouble a couple times because I had the mindset where, if I had a check down route or if I was going to the flat, and the defense was in some type of zone or some type of man, and they were sitting there where I was at, I wasn't going to be a sitting duck. So if things would, come or be called, I would tell Jamil, hey, I'm going to do this, or, hey, if they're sitting here, I'm going to break this way. So I would break a lot of my routes because I just didn't want to be, a stationary guy being covered. I always wanted to be a threat. And like I said, Jamil was a guy who extended plays. So that gave me, the opportunity to break off routes, whether they were angle routes or, like I said, swing routes or flat. And then one thing that we always stressed to each other was, once we do these play fakes, nobody on the backside pretty much pays attention to me. So I could sneak out the backside a lot for those H wheels that we would connect on or, whether they're 5-yard passes down the field off the 50, because guys weren't paying attention to me at that point, once they realized it was a fake. And they didn't realize, that I was really a threat, I think that was probably my biggest asset to my game was, the ability to catch, and run and make plays, out of the backfield. I just lined up in the back of it all the time.
I saw someone's scouting report, this guy, a writer named Jay Hu online, and he wrote about your running style. He talked about how you were a glider. And I was like, you know what? That's really the best adjective I can use to describe your running style. It was kind of like you were floating on air. You just kind of glided across the field. Is that the way your running style's always been?
Yeah. So, my dad, he's obviously watched me, run more than anybody in my life run the football. And he always, compared me to the Eric Dickerson style. I'm fast, but it's deceptive. You don't really think that I'm, running full speed, because like I said, it looks effortless, and I think that kind of honestly one of the things that I got for in practice, because it didn't appear that I was practicing harder, but that's just the way I was, developed to run. So like that caused some confusion, and it cost me some playing time and whatnot. But, once we got to the game, you've seen the same style that I had in practice, transferred over to the game. Like I said, I was always prepared, at that point, I wasn't even playing before the Maryland game, really, like I said. Just be able to go in there and have 28 or 29 touches. I didn't check out the game. I wasn't never tired, so like I was working my butt off in practice in the weight room and stuff. But sometimes, it just went unnoticed because, like you said, it looked effortless, like I was just gliding.
Yeah. That 2007 team, really one of the more special teams in Virginia football history, Juice. You guys won 5 games by 2 points or less that year, an NCAA record. Talk to me about the togetherness of that team and the way Al Groh talked out. You guys just never really panicked throughout games.
Yeah, well, Coach Groh's motive always was the next man up, so if somebody got hurt or, somebody had to miss a game, we always had that mindset that the next person, was capable of doing, the job just as good. And also I have to give a lot of credit to our strength coach that year, Coach Bailey. And, those were some of the most workouts that I've ever experienced, from any strength coach, at any level. And like I said, that night before, the actual summer camp kicked off, we had a midnight workout, where guys came in war painted. They wore, rags around their head and, cut up the shirt. We just had fun with it. But it was that band of brothers mentality that we had. Everybody, with that team, we hung out, off the field as often as we can. We sat in the locker room. We had tons of conversations, building, that trust and that relationship. So I think that was the biggest thing, as our leader, of that team, Jim Bill and Chris Long, they never, thought that they were bigger than a team or anything, above anything. Those guys were literally doing anything that, every team was doing, and that's the tone, when you see your best players, with the freshmen, and freshmen, the sophomores and stuff like that, because usually you don't get that, in a lot of programs, and especially a lot of, proven athletes, they come to this sometimes, they're not there for want to deal with, other stars on the team. Man, it was no matter how much you played, whether you played red shirt, everybody viewed each other the same. I think, like I said, that bond that season, to trust each other and trust the process, no matter how hard those games got, whether we got down 10 points or 14 points, we all knew, at some point, it's going to click for us. And, like I said, Coach Groh prepared us, for those situations and those moments in practice, with hardball situations, fastball situations, just preparing us for those things. So we got to the game, it wasn't so much of a stress. And, it was kind of like second nature because we already repertorized those things. And, offense for that year that we won against that defense, man, sometimes it was harder in practice, than the game was, Clint Simpson and, all those guys on the other side, man, those guys were physical. They were tough. So we got to the games, man, we were like, yeah, we're ready. We're ready.
Yeah, that defense was definitely loaded. One of my other favorite wins from that 2007 season, one of the best wins in Virginia football history, is when you guys closed down the Orange Bowl in one-sided fashion, 48-0, just an epic win for Virginia football. You said you were nervous before that game because they had all the Miami stars there for that one. Benny Blades, Michael Irvin, The Rock. They were all there,
Yeah.
but it was like my favorite quote from Chris Long after that game was, he said, "We were just excited to come down here and be a part of history."
Absolutely. And like I said, Coach said that the whole time. It's going to be a bunch of stars, NFL guys and Hall of Famers on the sideline. But one thing to do is not put on that Miami Hurricane uniform and go inside those lines. So, we got, caught up in, some of that hype. But once, the ball got kicked off, it was like, hey, those guys can't help this team. But, referring back to you saying I was nervous, yes, that was the only time that, in my entire career from little kid football to high school to college, that I was nervous. And, just growing up watching the Miami Hurricanes dominate, the late 90s and early 2000s, you'd see the videos, that they had games, in the 80s. So they had this mystique with them. People feared Miami, and like I said, at that point, the Virginia team having never won in the state of Florida. I think we were like 0-19 or 0-17
0-15. Yep.
Okay, 0-15. Yeah, I knew it was something like that. We wanted to change that. Like I said, I went in the locker room early. I asked Coach Dex, hey, can I go? My stomach's it's still rumbly right now. But like I said, once the ball got kicked off, all those jitters went away, the nerves went away, and it was, back to business.
I thought it was fascinating how Jamil Sewell compared you to Percy Harvin in practice. The funny thing is, did Keith Payne tell you any stories that he had about Percy Harvin from high school?
Yeah, so he didn't really get into any stories, but, they played in the state of Virginia for the state championship, of course. So, as, Virginia players, we follow, the state championship. So we heard a lot about Keith. We heard a lot about Percy. And, they won that game. They upset Percy in the state championship. And Keith, they said Keith played corner a lot that game. And, he kind of covered, Percy. I'm sure he had help. I didn't watch the film. We all know what type of athlete Keith was, running the ball. He was very physical. A guy that big, able to, kind of not lock down, control such an explosive athlete. We went on to see what Percy Harvin did down Florida. You see what he did, at the professional level. It was crazy to hear, the story.
Oh yeah, Keith Payne shutting down Percy Harvin to this day. One of the more impressive things of Keith Payne's football career, just absolutely epic. I wanted to ask you about going up against Calais Campbell, Miami Hurricanes. What'd you think of him? He's one of the more gifted defensive football players I've ever seen.
Wow. Man, he was amazing. And like I said, I can recall one play. It was a fake, actually. I think it was like a bootleg, and Jamil got rid of it quick. But I just remember getting up off the ground. I was on the ground, Jamil was on the ground, and Brandon Albert was on the ground. So if one person can knock down three people, and Brandon Albert was massive as well, that shows you the strength, that he possessed. And he was fast, too. He wasn't, a big guy that was slow. He can move. I remember actually maybe the third or fourth play of the game when I broke about a 25-yard run, he was the guy down the field on the tackle. Like, that guy was all over the place. It shows, every Sunday that guy just, he's late in his years, in the NFL, and he's still dominant. He got Defensive Player of the Year a couple years ago. So the guy is a phenomenal athlete, phenomenal freak. He played with such tenacity. And, yeah, he was a guy on that team that stood out. So, like, when you broke the huddle, he was one of the guys that I found first.
Absolutely. Nothing but great things to say about Calais Campbell. Yeah, you played with a really good offensive line in that 2007 campaign. Brandon Albert, Eugene Monroe, Will Barker. Uh, Brandon Albert, really one of the best pulling guards in Virginia football history. Elton Brown is up there as the best, but Brandon Albert was right up there as far as I'm concerned. Talk about
Man,
Brandon Albert and how talented that offensive line was for you that year.
Brandon, we call him Sweet Feet. Brandon, we played basketball. Brandon can move, like a small forward. Brandon was great on his feet. Brandon can dance tremendously great. So the type of athleticism that he possessed. But one thing I want to say is Jordan Lipsy, man, I think he was the glue to our offensive lineman. He was the one making all the calls. He was undersized, but man, he played his butt off every game. And people don't realize as a center, he was pulling and leading for a lot of those perimeter runs. So you can only imagine what he had to go through from, pulling around the center and getting on the edge. And he would do it all the time. And he would make all the calls, call out the front, call out the mic. And man, he was intelligent. He played a tremendous role in, their success and our team's success.
That starting five of that offensive line, tackle to tackle, all those guys were really highly recruited coming out of high school. From Yordy Lipsy, Ian Yates Cunningham, Barker, Brandon Albert, and Eugene Monroe was the number one player in the country coming out of high school.
Absolutely.
I mean, that guy, to this day, Eugene Monroe, probably the most dominant offensive lineman I've ever watched on tape coming out of high school. That guy would destroy people in Plainfield, New Jersey. He was a monster.
Yes, and like I said, he did the same thing in college and pros. And if you see now, oh my God, he looks like he's about 2% body fat. Man, he's a freak of nature. He was always dedicated to, he didn't do much partying, with the team when we would go out and stuff. He was, locked in and just becoming the best player that he possibly can. And I remember when Gene first got there, man, he would struggle with, the conditioning runs and those type of things. As years went on, he was dominating those things, and they were easy to him. So that showed the dedication he had to improving himself and getting his body in shape. Because Gene came in, he was massive, but he wasn't solid muscle. By the time he left, that's just what he was. And, that shows the dedication, like I said, he had to his craft.
Yeah. Talk about your high school recruitment process a little bit, Juice. I know you had 50 scholarships and you were down to Alabama and UVA. Funny story about your announcement. I remember watching you on ESPN News, and you said that you were going to the University of Alabama, but you had a Virginia hat on, right?
Yes. That was unintentional.
Was that a joke? Because I was like, he was definitely joking. Like he had that planned.
I honestly did. So what happened was the analyst, I let him know beforehand, that I was going to, sign with Virginia. So I guess his role was to kind of deal with the Alabama signing. So a lot of his questions, if you look back, they were pertaining to Alabama. So Alabama was just, at the top of my head, so when I went to say it, that's just what came out, and I laugh about it now, but that was unplanned. I look back and I'm like, wow, that was an epic moment, and a lot of fans, I remember reading on the social network, the boards down there, Alabama, a lot of those guys think that, as disrespect, but that wasn't the case. That wasn't my intention at all. It just was a conversation, it was kind of dominated with Alabama, kind of setting up the surprise. Oh, well, you're not going to Alabama, you're going to sign with Virginia. And, I just got caught up in the moment, I'm like, oh, wow, I'm not going to Alabama, I'm going to Virginia. Yeah, but my biggest thing that I liked about was got me, to come to Virginia was Coach Dex. When he would come up on a visit, he would be like that father figure. He would be like that mentor to me, and he was a young player himself. I mean, not a player, but he was still young, kind of removed from the game a couple years before that. So, he had that player mentality. So, when you have those type of coaches who can really understand, and they're kind of, in your age ballpark, they understand, what goes on with a college player, and they're able to relate to you and answer, a lot of the questions that you have. And he was a straight shooter. But what I like most about Coach Dex, if you made mistakes, he wouldn't yell at you. He wouldn't get on you. He would do it in a joking way. If I missed a block or something, he'd be like, "Oh, really, Juice, you scared of me? What's going on, Juice?" It would be a joking way, but he would get his message. So he would get his coach point in a fun way where, it didn't demean you or it didn't make you feel, down on yourself. It was kind of, encouraging, and laughable moments, but they were also teachable, so the game was still fun.
That's awesome. Talk about the Gator Bowl a little bit, Juice. I was at that game. 96-yard TD run, the longest run in Virginia history, and the longest run by a running back in a bowl game in NCAA history. Talk about that 96-yard run a little bit.
Yeah, so we were back, and I remember Rashawn got in that first play, first down, trying to give us some breathing room. And then, I came in that next play, and I remember one of their defensive ends kind of knifed in, and he almost kind of got me at like the 1 yard line. I was able to lift my leg up. And then when I, got through that hole, I see how massive it was. My mentality, if you give me a lane, I don't care who it is, where we're at, how far we got to go. I am not going to get caught. To me, that was just embarrassing, to get caught, especially, when you have the clear, you have the green. So pretty much, that hole opened up, and Chris Gorham got a good block down the field. Like I said, any run, successful that's long, you have to have receivers downfield blocking. Once I see him getting his guy, I knew it was off to the races, and I kind of watched, the play unwind on the Jumbotron, so I could see where those guys were, how close they were to me. So that was a big moment for me, a big moment for that team. And, unfortunately, we were unable to pull that game out. But, we put up a good fight that game.
You had 25 touches for over 200 all-purpose in that game and 2 TDs. Was there anything, were you feeling special before that game? Anything in particular?
I don't think I so special or like this is today. You kind of just go in the game and then you just get in that zone and it's going. Like I said, at that point I was, playing, so it wasn't, I had to try to get in and make a big play. I just was taking what the defense was giving me. That's how, the great running backs are. They don't look for the home runs. They take what the defense gives you, and at some point, those home runs are naturally going to come. So, approaching that game, it was that kind of mindset. And, at that point, I was playing, with the offense and, that first team for about 5 or 6 games. So, I got a feel for, how they pull, how they down block, and those type of things, how they climb up, to the linebackers, go to the secondary. So it was just like, those combinations of, just having experience playing with those guys, just having experience playing, in a live game, at running back at that level, it gives you more confidence. So I wouldn't say it was more so like, zone. I would say I was more confident, because earlier, you get in the game and, sometimes as it goes fast, the game is very fast paced at that level. You don't have time to think, because if you think at that level, you're a sitting duck, you look bad, so it was just that mindset. I feel comfortable. This is a great offensive line I got in front of me. We're going to go out here and dominate. And, the reports that week, in our studies, that they gave up, a lot of runs, big plays. They struggled, containing the run. And that was our game plan, to attack them. I knew, with our great offensive line, they were going to give me some chances, and I just had to take advantage of them. Like I said, just unfortunately, Jamil got hurt in that game, and things kind of went south.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about what you're doing now in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I know you're working with the Capital Rebirth Foundation. That's your foundation. And I saw that you guys are working on building a facility that's going to be $175 million, William Penn High School.
Yeah. So that's a former high school that's been abandoned for about 10 years that our local school district owns. So, I started this organization, once I found out, football was over unexpectedly. When I found with Cincinnati Bengals, I failed the physical, they found that I had spinal stenosis and bone spurs, which is down on the spine, and my bones were chipped. So I came home, and I got into a very deep depression, considered suicide. The birth of my daughter saved me, and that's why my organization is called Rebirth. Which stands for respect earned by intelligence, resilience, truth, and humanity, and capital being, Harrisburg is the capital of Pennsylvania. So I kind of just want with the idea of, basing everything around sports And I know that there's not one indoor football stadium that exists in the whole Northeast region, but, the Carrier Dome in Syracuse, which is miles away. So I kind of built that project off of that. So this is a project I worked for about 6 or 7 years till I got to this point, and small pieces got added, education part, because our community lacks a vo-tech area, where these people can, whether they're adults or kids, can have these hands-on experience with trades and, be exposed to those type of things. They can go out and get jobs in the plumbing and electric and those type of sorts. So then I said, hey, we need classrooms to go with that, so built in the whole section where we have 50 college-style lecture classrooms. Then I'm like, well, we need swimming, minorities especially, we lack that experience in swimming, and a lot of deaths occur, due to drowning because we aren't exposed to that type of stuff. And I'm like, wow, this is kind of a food desert here as well. And, growing up, not anybody that I know was introduced to any type of farming or agriculture, something like that's a piece we need. And then, as I got older, I started working with autistic kids, adults and those type of things. And like, wow, they don't really have a place, where they can come. So that's where that area came in. Basketball is rich tradition here in the city, so it was obvious, that I was going to put 4 basketball courts in there. A physical gym, I want that in there as well. Then we had, a physical rehab center, because like I said, we have all these on-site, fitness and sports going on, you need that, department in there as well. And then when I thought about it, I said, hey, a daycare will fit great in here, get these kids exposure to the swimming, exposure to the agriculture, exposure to, working out properly and healthy, and what that does to your body, especially with education. And then, I wanted to add an indoor playground on top of that area because, like I said, we face winter up here. So, we're pretty closed for 6 to 7 months. So these kids can't get out and go to the playground, so they're not as active. And, that fight against obesity, that, encouragement, for social, bringing people together. And then, everything just clicked, and it's like, hey, I need to implement all these things, to benefit my community, Then I met with my team, about 2 years ago. I formed my team, and, so I had tons and tons of documents and, research laid out. And my team, they helped put everything together like glue. We placed our bid a couple months ago. We're just waiting to hear back from the school district right now. We have some investors, potential waiting, once we get, word that we have the land, and we're all ready to go. And like I said, this is going to benefit our whole entire community for generations to come.
Yeah, Juice, I saw that you were working with youth that had attempted suicide. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, like I said, football was taken unexpectedly to me. I was coming out of college, I wasn't drafted, but, as a free agent, I felt, that I could play with anybody. I felt like I proved that in college. If you look back at, the games and combine the catches and rushes, if I touched the ball, over 15, 16 times, I was averaging, almost 170 a game, 2 touchdowns. So in my mind, I knew I could play at that level. So I was just eager to get out there, and show myself that next level. But that never happened, so I came back home. I didn't have a plan, like I said, same day I signed the contract, I was supposed to go home, to never play again. So I'm chasing this dream, since I was 5 years old. It was devastating and life changing. And I had no, sight direction, to go after that. And it was very depressing. I drank a lot during that time, partied a lot just to escape the reality of my situation. But like I said, the birth of my daughter, man, that saved me completely and gave me new hope. And, since I had my daughter, I don't drink anymore. I barely party. I may go out once or twice a year, and that is it. My main focus is my daughter, and improving my community in any way that I can. Like last week, we had a protest, which I helped organize, and it's probably the first in the nation's history where I was able to get the Pennsylvania state governor, the city of Harrisburg mayor, and the city of Harrisburg chief of police to protest and walk in these streets of my community and sit and listen at the rally for 3 hours in the baking sun, two, concerns that we have within our community. And the next day, read the headlines, the mayor started to implement, different forms for, police brutality and, the approaches that they take in training, as well as the governor. So our voices were heard. That's the biggest thing. And like I said, I just want to change my community now. My football passion is still there, but I understand now my calling, was bigger than football.
Well, Juice, we're all glad to hear that you're okay and that you found your purpose in life. I think a lot of people, myself included, a lot of times you really lose sight of how hard it is for athletes to find a purpose once their playing career is done, just like you have highlighted. Who was your favorite football team growing up, Juice? I'm curious. Was it the Steelers?
Honestly, it was the 49ers for a little bit when they had Ricky Waters there because he was from my town. So I kind of followed players. I wasn't necessarily a team-driven guy. So when he went to the Eagles, I was an Eagles fan. Once he retired, I kind of never picked up a team. Even to this day, I don't have an NFL team. I love college football. Like I said before, I signed with the University of Virginia. I was a big Hurricane fan. And now I'm diehard Virginia across the board. I don't miss any of the games that they play. I'm tuned in to everything that they do. Like I said, I love college football just for the fact that, we have bands, we have cheerleaders, these are students that you see, on a daily basis, coming to support you. It's pure at that college level. You're not influenced by money or high contracts and endorsements and all that type of thing. And everybody, we're all together. When you get to that next level, people have families. Once, you leave the football facility, you go about your own day. But, college, everybody stays together. Once practice is over, everybody's going to hang out at each other's apartments, dorms, and whatnot. I just love the whole vibe of college. And like I said, there's so many teams and so many schools. And I believe college has more rivalry than the NFL.
Yeah, I agree, Juice. I will always be a college football guy first and foremost, just a college football junkie, reading all the Phil Steele magazines and things like that. I can never get enough. So it was pretty awesome, following your recruitment coming out of high school. And it's also even cooler to me when the players are diehard college football fans, because sometimes,
Yeah.
once you get out of football, you might not pay attention to it. But to me,
I'm locked in.
there's nothing else like a college football Saturday in the fall. It is just epic, man.
Absolutely. And I found that, I was able, once I got done, I was to come back and enjoy the tailgating part because, when we did the Wahoo Walk before games, I was like, man, this is amazing. Thousands of people coming together, just eating, drinking, and, celebrating together from all different walks of life. And right now, I'm actually also a huge Penn State fan right now. My little cousin, Michael Parson, who's projected a top 5 pick. He plays linebacker.
Oh, yeah, he's big time. He's big time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my little cousin, so I'm cheering him on and, hoping, the best for him. And right now, he's tearing up the college level, and I'm just so proud of him right now.
Yeah, college football is great, man. I'm curious, Juice, what are your thoughts on the Reggie Bush situation? I know Reggie Bush, USC, disassociated with him for 10 years. My thoughts, personally, I thought it was all bullshit. I thought it was ridiculous that they took his Heisman away, for one. I thought that was ridiculous. Step two, I think the fact that USC had to disassociate from Reggie for 10 years was ridiculous because, I don't care what anyone says. Okay, sure, he got money, okay? But it's not a performance enhancing thing,
Absolutely.
He earned that Heisman. You cannot take the man's Heisman trophy away. It really pissed me off when out of all the players in the Heisman that have won the Heisman trophy, they decide to single out Reggie Bush. It's like, do you really think that none of the other guys have cheated? Come on, man. I thought it was totally ridiculous how they singled out Reggie Bush.
I'm in full agreement with you. And it's funny you brought up Reggie Bush. So when I called Coach Groh coming out of high school commit, that's why I asked to wear because, Reggie Bush, I feel like we kind of had similar games where, he would line up the receiver, he was a threat out the backfield. But that whole USC, banning him for 10 years, that shit never took place. Number one, USC was well aware of what was going on. Trust me, I know. College coaches know everything that's going on campus. So if they didn't nip that in the butt then, don't try to nip it in the butt when you get caught. You should take the penalty, and maybe the coaches should be disassociated with the university, but not the player. And like I said, like you just said, it was between the lines. Where's money, is he paying defenders off? Hey, don't tackle me? No. Is he taking, performance-enhancing drugs where, his game and performance is being elevated by something other than him? No, that wasn't the case. So nothing football related that happened within those lines, playing lines, should be affected or brought into the picture. And like I said, the guy, he wasn't a bad character guy. He never got in trouble. So it's like you're penalizing him for what? And another big thing is a lot of guys like myself and the younger generation. They look at Reggie Bush, they look at those highlights. So you're pushing recruits away, that could potentially come to your school solely because Reggie Bush came there, or they went on a visit and Reggie Bush was there and they got to meeting. Those type of things are impactful, for guys recruiting, especially a 17, 18-year-old guy can meet somebody like that on a visit. That can be the commitment there. It may not be the head coach. It just be, hey, I know Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush. Oh, Reggie Bush comes back to our practices. Oh, he can come back and teach me some things that he learned. It's like it just is bad all across the board. And then, it sends a bigger message to the USC fan base. Players, it's like, you guys disassociated with him? Really? Yeah, I can't support you guys no more either.
The whole USC thing, I think the biggest thing that everyone overlooks in the whole USC Reggie Bush situation, and the national media doesn't mention this name at all, but I've studied it very intensely over the years. Todd Mcnair. They made Todd Mcnair, the running backs coach, take the fall for the whole thing. And they did not lay a finger on guys like Pete Carroll and the rest of that staff. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was total bullshit, dude. I was so pissed. It's like, okay, right, you guys are going to single out Todd Mcnair and not touch any of the other coaches. It was total bullshit. They made Todd McNair the fall guy for that whole situation.
And if I'm not mistaken, he was little with Matt Leinart, correct?
I think so. I'm not really sure.
So did Matt Leinart lose his Heisman? Did he get any trouble? Did he get thrown away from the university for 10 years? No.
Yeah, the whole situation just made me so mad, dude. And I'm just amazed that more people haven't come out and just said, I'm outraged by the fact you took Reggie Bush's Heisman. It really pissed me off. He earned it fair and square. And not only that, the funny thing about Reggie winning the Heisman, he had over 2,000 all-purpose yards the previous year. I thought he should have won it the previous year.
Absolutely. But then it goes back to piggyback too. College athletes need some type of conversation for what they're doing. We're making millions and millions of dollars for that university. And I'm sure his jersey was sold nationwide, which equates to millions of dollars. Now, I'm not saying athletes should get thousands of dollars, but an extra $500 a month just so they can pay a cell phone bill, or, they can get a nice outfit or go out to eat, put gas in their car, where they don't have to be tempted to take this money. I remember in college, my phone was turned off several times because I couldn't pay a cell phone bill. You know what I mean? It's like that stuff I shouldn't struggle with when I see my jersey everywhere, when I see him on the billboards or, the magazine covers. It's like, we're making money for this program. Give us something back. You know what I mean? I'm not asking the athletes to be paid thousands of dollars in college. I don't agree with that. But a couple $100 a month is not going to hurt nobody.
Yeah.
And we can't work. We can't get jobs. So, like the normal students, they can work part-time jobs and make, extra $700-800 a month. Why can't we?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, when you equivalate all the hours that we put in, we're getting paid minimum wage, way below minimum wage. We have to go to study hall. We have to lift. We have to be in meetings. We have to practice. Our day, we have a 12-hour day. 7-8 of it is for football.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Juice. I'll be honest, man. For the longest time, I used to think that college athletes like basketball and football should not get paid at all. But honestly, after listening to stories like yours and other athletes over the years, I've come down on the other side of it. And I think you're on the reasonable side where, maybe give them about $1,000 a month. And I think the system, it would have to be a flat, income number for all players. You know what I mean?
Because, yeah. I'm not saying just because you're a star, you get more than this player. No, I think it should be across the board even, because at the end of the day, we're all, time consumed with football. So, it's not like, oh, because you're the star, you got to spend more time dealing with football. No, we're all there together. And without, that defense or those other teammates, that star player wouldn't get pushed in practice the way he would to be the star that he is. You know what I'm saying? So I'm believing in thousands of dollars. No, I'm totally against that. but like I said, a couple $100 a month just for a person to be able to have the basic needs and be able to enjoy college. Like, it sucks walking around, when you're like, dang, these normal students, they have part-time jobs. They can, make a couple dollars on the side where they can go enjoy life. They can go do things, off campus and stuff. And it's like, wow, we can't even pay our cell phone. But I don't have enough money to put my, gas in my car, and I have to go back and forth, to the practice facility. I'm going to do that. Sometimes, I have to leave my car, catch the bus, or, leave my car and catch the ride with somebody else. And that should never be the case.
Yeah, I agree, Juice. I think they need to set up some sort of a stipend system. I'm curious, Juice, what are your thoughts on the new endorsement rule that players can make money off of their likeness with advertisements? Talk to me about that a little bit.
And like I said, that's where it's going to get tricky, because those star players are going to see so much money, compared to other players. I'm against that one. I think they should be compensated, like I said, some type of funding, that it can carry them over. Maybe, hey, if you're a star player, hey, you deserve a vacation somewhere that'll be paid for, but I don't think they should have that physical money. Even like during our time, we were on the NCAA college PlayStation game and, Xbox game. If they would have just gave us a free copy of the game, I would have been super happy, because during that time, we're kicking out that $63. I can say, just give me a copy. It's not even going to cost you that much. Just give us something, to satisfy us, but don't just take full advantage of us and don't give anything in return.
Yeah, I agree, man. Dude, I miss NCAA football so much. Like, if the creators of NCAA football ever listen to this, please, God, find a way to get the game back.
Absolutely.
Please.
Like, give the players a free copy. I'm sure they'll be happy. Or, give it to them, 2 weeks in advance. Something, till college football is made again, I'm not ever buying another gaming system.
Oh, man. I mean, it used to be so much fun playing with Billy McMullen and Bryson Spinner and Wally Lundy, all the Virginia players. I mean, I remember I used to want Gerard Mayo to go to UVA so bad, and I created him in NCAA football, and I gave him like a shaded visor and everything, and he'd win the Heisman. Like, dude, I love playing with my dynasties in NCAA football, Virginia, man. I miss that game so much.
Yeah, that's the only game I could play so long. Like I said, you get into that whole recruiting part. Like a lot of times I would get, small school, and I would fix the schedule to play all the big schools. So, now my program is being built up. Just building a program, that was wonderful too. Like I said, just playing with yourself was amazing. Guys back home would call me, hey, I'm playing with you in the game. Wow, you're fast on the game. And that stuff is priceless. It's priceless.
Talk to me about Virginia basketball, Juice. Did you follow Virginia basketball in our run to the national title?
Oh, absolutely, I did. And that program is becoming a staple. Like I said, our coach has more wins. Coach Bennett has more wins than, the past 5 years than North Carolina and Duke and all those, ACC basketball powerhouses that we, are typically seeing. And the way I like, he builds a team off character. It's not a coming in there dominated player where he's going to come in there 1 year and, he's out going to the NBA. It's a fundamental system that he's bringing, and guys are playing, 3-4 years together and building that rapport, building that relationship. And you see it, like I said, our championship run, we were pretty much out of it the game before. We threw that pass down the court and made that shot. That's because those guys built that camaraderie up, over years. It's not that one and done type of team, man. I love what Coach Bennett is doing down there for that basketball team. And I love, our football program is coming together. It's like, wow, UVA sports is becoming a force.
Absolutely.
To be reckoned with across the board. Because we were always great at lacrosse. We were always great at soccer. We were always great at swimming. Now we're starting to come to foreface with the two dominating sports, which is, football and basketball. Man, our university, we're up to something great. And then we're building that new complex, sport complex come in. I'm not sure when it's supposed to be built, but that's only going to encourage more recruits to come and, be able to assist our athletes in a way better way. I'm excited for UVA sports right now.
Absolutely, Juice. I was down at Miami for the Orange Bowl. That was a classic game. I mean, we came up a little short, but I loved how the boys competed in that one. I knew I was sitting in the second row, and I knew I was behind the Florida bench, and I knew once Bryce Perkins was able to get that ball in the back of the end zone to Cease Dubois that he was coming down with that rock.
Oh, absolutely. He didn't drop nothing, did he? He had some sure hands. And I'm shocked, NFL scouts didn't realize that man's hands are glue. And, he didn't go third or fourth round. Like, that's how I viewed him. That's the type of talent I thought he had.
Yeah, I was blown away, Juice. Really, the NFL draft is always a puzzling thing to me. I think it's like a lot of things in life, you really can't predict what's going to happen. And there's always just mind-blowing surprises. Like the stats that Bryce Perkins put on the football field the past 2 years and the fact that he went undrafted, to me, is just mind-blowing. I mean, he's one of the best quarterbacks in ACC football history.
Absolutely. And I honestly thought that, the Baltimore Ravens, with having Lamar Jackson there and him being very similar, that they would go ahead and pull the trigger and take him, in fourth or fifth round, somewhere at least, in case Lamar gets hurt. The offense is still running the same way because Bryce is that dynamic player, as Lamar Jackson. I think, I remember seeing some statistics and stuff. He may have been ahead of Lamar Jackson in statistics, or just right there with him. So you're getting that same type of quarterback, just not as fast, very explosive. He has a good arm and he spins plays. And it was a joy watching him. We got him transferred in. It was a mystery. What is this guy going to do? What is he going to bring to the table? He's the reason, our football program is on the uprise. Coming in, he was a mystery. And just seeing him progress every season, putting the ball where it needs to be, tucking it and running and being a threat. Like I said, he's not as fast as Lamar Jackson, but he was just as effective.
Yeah, I agree, man. Bryce Perkins, before the Virginia Tech game this year, I told all the guys at the tailgate, they're like, "Are you nervous?" I was like, "You know what? I'm not nervous at all. We got the best player in the game." And I knew in my heart of hearts that Bryce Perkins was not going to let that disappointment of last year's Virginia Tech game, he was going to extinguish all of that pain. And for him to have those two breakaway runs early, I mean, it filled my heart with so much joy. I knew he was going to do it, man. Bryce is a incredible person, man. What a warrior.
Yeah, he's great, man. It was phenomenal watching him play. Like I said, develop it, get that win against Virginia Tech after all these years. Oh, my God, it was like Christmas. It was like Christmas. We got to keep this tradition going. We just need to beat the crap out of Virginia Tech every single chance we get in all sports across the board.
That's awesome. Well, Juice, really appreciate you coming on, my man. It's been a pleasure to talk UVA sports with you and to rehash some memories of your career. We're thankful you found your purpose in life and that you're doing great things in Harrisburg, my man. We wish you all the best. Thanks so much for coming on, my man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. It was a pleasure. I enjoyed the conversation.
All right. Take care, Juice. See ya.
All right. Wahoo.
You've been listening to the Flow Theory Podcast. You can listen to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and TuneIn.